Welcome, everyone. I'm Jared Fowler, and I am the Senior Director of Strategic and International Initiatives here at the National Center for Healthcare Leadership, or NCHL. For those of you who may not be familiar with NCHL, we're an American 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to advancing healthcare leadership and organizational excellence by building diverse, inclusive, and collaborative relationships in the U.S. and abroad. We engage in research in health leadership, organizational development, and international healthcare for the 160 plus U.S. hospitals, health systems, and educational institutions that participate in one or more of our premier membership programs. I'm pleased to serve as the moderator for today's town hall, a solution to the nursing shortage, international nurses, ? This topic is one where both international healthcare and healthcare human resources intersect. So it should be of broad interest to organizations across NCHL's membership programs. So with American hospitals facing a dire shortage of nurses, as many of you may be aware, many are looking abroad for healthcare workers. This session will provide background information on the phenomenon of international nurses working at U.S. hospitals and highlight the uptick since the pandemic. And discuss how American providers are attempting to alleviate staffing shortages by recruiting nurses from abroad. We'll also explore ethical and practical considerations related to the long-term sustainability of the practice. So I'm pleased to introduce our three esteemed panelists for today, starting with Dr. Beverly Malone, who serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the National League for Nursing, and she's also a member of NCHL's Board of Directors. So dedicated to excellence in nursing, the National League for Nursing as the nation's first nursing association and serves as the leading voice for nurse faculty and leaders in nursing education. It offers professional development, networking opportunities, assessment services, nursing research grants, and public policy advocacy for nearly 45,000 individuals and over 1,000 institutional members. Its members represent nursing education programs across the spectrum of higher education, healthcare organizations, and agencies. We're also pleased to welcome Dr. Peter Preziosi, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer of CGFNS International. And CGFNS International is an immigration neutral nonprofit organization that helps foreign educated healthcare professionals live and work in their country of choice by assessing and validating their academic and professional credentials. It provides foreign students and healthcare professionals with a comprehensive assessment of their academic records to facilitate their successful admission to school in the U.S. and elsewhere. The organization protects migrating healthcare professionals by advocating for ethical recruitment practices and continuously monitoring the global landscape for developing trends in employment recruitment and workplace norms. And finally, I'm excited to welcome Mr. Ajay Parikh, who serves as the Vice President of Human Resources and Shared Services, Employee Health and Safety, and Talent Acquisition at Henry Ford Health. As one of the United States' leading academic medical centers, Henry Ford is recognized for clinical excellence in cancer care, cardiology, and cardiovascular surgery, neurology and neurosurgery, orthopedics and sports medicine, and multi-organ transplant. It's currently ranked among the top 5 NIH-funded institutions in Michigan and engages in more than 2,000 research projects annually. Henry Ford is equally committed to educating the next generation of health professionals and trains more than 4,000 medical students, residents, and fellows every year across 50 plus accredited programs. And they have more than 33,000 team members, which makes it among Michigan's largest and most diverse employers. So I'd like to go over a couple of housekeeping items before we dive in. So if audience members would like to ask questions during the session, you may use the Q&A feature, and panelists will answer them during the Q&A session at the end. And we'll try to go in the order in which they were received. And additionally, we are going to enable closed captioning right now. In an effort to make our events accessible and welcome additional feedback regarding the ways in which we can meet the needs of all of the attendees. And with that, I'd like to start with you, Dr. Malone. Could you kick us off by giving us some background on the nature of the nursing shortage in the U.S., particularly since the onset of the pandemic? And additionally, you can maybe talk about the role that international nurses have traditionally played in U.S. hospitals' efforts to address their staffing shortages and how that landscape has changed over the past few years.
Yes, thank you, Jared. Colleagues, it's good to be with you today. Nursing is a microcosm of the rest of society, and so I'm going to present it from that perspective. This is a time of the Great Resignation. That's what the era is being called. More than 5 million workers have quit their jobs, sometimes their entire careers, since February 2021. An additional 4 million workers resigned monthly during the second half of 2021. The majority of workers who resigned from their positions cited low pay, lack of respect, a number of those issues. The healthcare industry has been the hardest hit, reporting losses of 20% of the workforce over the past 2 years, 30% of the nursing workforce. Overall, healthcare employment is down by an estimated 500,000 workers. The factors include the decision to resign is like burnout, exhaustion, a lack of well-being, a desire for greater flexibility and work-life balance. Nursing colleagues also report insufficient staffing, not feeling valued or listened to, desiring emotional stability, and seeking higher wages as reasons for resigning their post. Escalating nursing turnover rates lead to further decrease in morale and job satisfaction, as well as increased rates of burnout. Low staffing adds to the workload of the remaining nurses, who are often assuming role responsibilities normally completed by a full complement of RN and support staff, further exacerbating the problem. The ANA, the American Nurses Association, predicts there will be a shortage of 1.1 million nurses within the year. The economic toll on our healthcare organizations financially struggling from the pandemic is staggering. Organizations are paying an estimated $24 billion annually, above what operating costs were pre-pandemic. Overtime hours have increased by 52%, and agency labor costs are up 132%. The problem is even greater in rural areas, accounting for 60% of the workforce shortage. The cost of our healthcare systems, for example, large sign-on bonuses at the expense of retention activities and recognition of dedicated staff, it's taking a high toll on patient healthcare. The extent of the workforce shortage is a current public health crisis that demands immediate attention. Academic environments are also experiencing labor shortages because of the Great Resignation. The National Education Association reported approximately half of all educators were likely to resign or retire early. Higher education positions have recently increased by 16.5% for the educational sector. The nurse faculty shortage has been well documented before the pandemic, but it continues to intensify because of the exodus of nurses leaving the profession. According to our colleagues my colleagues at the National League for Nursing, 178 full-time faculty across 317 schools retired early or left their positions with a stated reason of COVID-19. Currently, only 1.9% of the nursing workforce holds doctoral degrees, compared with the 58% of faculty vacancies that require a doctorate. A shrinking nurse workforce, the pipeline for recruiting future faculty, leads us to the need to recruit internationally as a partial part of solving this problem, but only a partial part, colleagues. In the past, we have reached out, and the Philippines have been a prime example of a factory almost of wonderful, well-prepared, English-speaking, for the most part, nurses who are actually educated to be transferred over to the US. It's a bridge from the Philippines to the US. But it has not been as effective lately, and it has left the Philippines in jeopardy in terms of their own nursing workforce shortage. So we are now having issues that have been here before, but are intensified, issues about recruiting from places where they can least afford to have nurses leave. For example, like the islands, the Bahamas, the other islands that are there, where you have a emergency room where there's only one nurse who's well prepared to run that. And there are other nurses there, but one senior nurse. And that is, of course, the one that's recruited. It's not the newer nurses. It's the one with the most experience. It cripples the entire emergency room. It cripples the entire specialty areas that are there of that institution, of that healthcare institution. And those are the kind of issues that we're facing with international recruitment. It's ethical and morally sometimes not viable for us to continue in the way that we're doing it. So with that, Jared, I will stop and giving sort of an overview of not just nursing, but of that this is a time of great resignation throughout the country, and that nursing is truly a microcosm of what's going on with the rest of the world.
Thank you, Dr. Malone. I appreciate your insights. Next, Dr. Preziosi, I understand you prepared some slides on trends in international nurse migration and recruitment for us, and would you like to dive in on that?
Great, thank you very much. Can you see my slides here?
Yes, we can.
Excellent, excellent. Well, first, let me take this opportunity to thank the National Center for Healthcare Leadership. I'm very pleased to be here with my colleagues on this panel, this esteemed panel, and very much looking forward to engaging with all of you on this very important issue. So my topic will be focused more on what we're seeing and experiencing with nurse migration into the United States. It looks a little bit different in other parts of the world, but I'll be focusing, since this is a US audience, on the United States. So CGFNS International is approved by the United States Department of Homeland Security to validate the credentials of 9 foreign healthcare professions, including nursing, for occupational visas. So in 2022, over 80% of the visa screen applicants that we received were registered nurses. US immigration of foreign educated nurses has risen steadily in the past 5 years. Just between 2021 and 22, there was a 44% increase. If you take a look from 2018 to 2022, it was a 109% increase of internationally qualified nurse applicants that were coming into the United States. CGFNS data suggests that there will be an increased interest in nurse migration to the United States in the coming years. In terms of the top sending countries, Bev Malone mentioned that the Filipino nurses make up more than half of the visa screen applications that we received in 2022. Canada is next with 15%. You may be questioning why we've got 7% from the United States. Those are applicants educated in the United States that are international students earning a nursing degree in US schools of nursing. So we catalog them as from the US. But there are 95% of our visa screen applicants come from 10 countries. India is another big one that they make up 3%. And there are reasons for that, and I can explain that a little bit later. In terms of the top destinations where nurses are going to, our data in our credential evaluation service report, it's an advisory report that talks about where nurses will be wanting to work, finds that Texas, Illinois, Florida, Montana, and Maryland were the top states where internationally qualified nurses sought licensure in 2022. Now, New York is also another high attractive state, but we have a different program that services New York State internationally qualified nurses. So that's why they are not on this map, but there are, that is another very large state that receives internationally qualified nurses. So I was asked to talk a little bit about some of the main recruitment pathways coming into the United States, and there are three major ways that internationally qualified nurses come into the US. The least common is direct recruitment, and that is where nurses sign directly with their employer. The constraint here is that the timeline takes very long, so hospitals are usually not inclined to recruit directly internationally qualified nurses. Then there's placement firms. Placement firms match nurses to institutions where the nurse then signs directly with the employer. Contracts are made directly with employers, are not subject to additional review by institutions like the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration. Then the most common model is staffing firms. This is where contracts are signed with a staffing firm, not the employer, and typically include a breach fee. So benefits for the international qualified nurse include a widespread network of opportunities around the United States. Now, please note that internationally qualified nurses may also come into the US through other visa categories like a family visa or also through refugee status. Now, lastly, I'm going to talk about some of the barriers, immigration barriers that can deter nurse migration. So first, we've got US immigration barriers. These are visa backlogs, long processing times, restrictive country caps, like visa retrogression, are the leading immigration barriers for nurse migrants seeking work in the United States. Visa retrogression occurs when more people apply for a visa in a particular category or country than there are visas available for that particular month in that particular year. This greatly impacts highly populous countries like India, where nurses are often left waiting 1 or 2 decades for visa selection and processing. That's why I was saying before that number from India is a lot lower. Nurses experiencing retrogression migrate to more favorable countries, such as the United Kingdom, Canada, and the Gulf region. Now, there are sending country barriers. There are restrictive policies in sending countries that also impact global nurse migration flows. One example is in the Philippine government nurse deployment cap of 7,500 per year. Before the pandemic, there was upwards of 20,000 healthcare professionals that left the Philippines annually. Now there's a cap because their healthcare system needs to rely on nurses in their country. A second example is in India. During the height of the pandemic, the Indian government restricted domestic flights and banned international travel in an attempt to stop the spread of the virus. Indian nurses who had visas to work in the US and elsewhere were physically unable to migrate due to this travel lockdown. And then lastly, there is the global response. In response to health workforce shortages, certain countries are taking policy steps that encourage an increase in nurse immigration. Countries looking to supplement their workforce shortages with international talent are increasingly lessening common immigration barriers and wait times for health workers. Another strategy is the creation of nursing and healthcare specific visa categories. So in the UK, there's an example of this where annually they distribute 50,000 work visas to nurses and healthcare workers in an attempt to address their workforce shortage. The US had a similar visa for nursing program, the H1C program, from 1999 to 2009. So this is the end of my slides. And I think that why don't we kick it over to AJ, I guess, for him to present, and then for you, Jared, however you want to take it.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very interesting and provocative information in those slides, and I think good points for discussion. So Yeah, I'd love to. So from the provider perspective, get a sense of so what Henry Ford's experience has been when it comes to international nurse recruitment to help address staffing shortages. What's been successful and what have some of the pain points been, both for the health system and for the international nurses? And maybe talk a little bit more about the ethical and practical considerations that U.S. hospitals should be thinking about.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for my esteemed speakers for going ahead of me. For folks, this has been what a journey, I will tell you. I'll just talk about the last presentation, what you saw, and one of the things what caught my attention was the least common thing, right? And I'm here to talk about what Henry Ford chose is one of those least common ways, what we call as a direct hire model, what was presented in this slide. And I will tell you, when we thought about why direct hire, why did Henry Ford chose that model? You know what, we'll start with that to the first. If it's not most common, well, why not? One of the things with that model comes, it definitely comes with the lowest cost, but on the other hand, to the organization, but other hand, there is a lot of accountability for the employer. It requires significant commitment, I will tell you, participation, as well as a futuristic view or outlook from the employer, which is very valuable in this case, for also to build loyalty, what I would call within the nurses. And this cannot be accomplished, I will tell you, based off Henry Ford health experiences without a partner. You need to make sure that you have a partner who will keep you in compliance with the strict Philippines government regulations. I'll give you a snapshot of what is our current journey so that way people understand where we are in this journey. We started this journey, I would say last January or a later part of 2021 to January 2022. As we went into this together, we had a kind of a direct, we decided to go direct model. We built a partnership with an organization, and we said, how do we go about where we become the petitioner for the employer, and we ensure that our partners helps us. There are no middlemen involved. We have a direct connection where they would screen some candidates for us and assist those candidates in this migration journey. They are kind of our liaisons working in Philippines. So far we have gone twice to Philippines. Both times we have offered about 220 plus nurses. We are so far till this date, we are in more than an year, we have offered to about 400 and I would say 30 plus candidates who are active in our pipeline, and are, begin with the, one of our first nurse is arriving next Thursday. So that's one of the first one, and starting in our facilities on May 1st. We are super excited for that nurse to start on May 1st. So finally, it's a good 18 to 24 months hard work, which is coming on to this. We also talked about visa retrogression. That's something big all of you guys should understand. And it is so big that it just changed yesterday. Philippines government were very concerned about the state of their healthcare, the amount of files came through. So just to give you people a perspective, yesterday, for the first time, the visa retrogression happened in a way that what they were current, what it means, a category means current, means anybody who has filed a certain immigration status, the first step, can go for interview and come here for green card. To that matter, they changed that date to go back to June of 2022. So what it means is that if you did not file for your first step of labor as of June 1st, you cannot still apply for the interview. We have about good 60, 70 candidates who are now stuck because their immigration process would have came through, but now no longer their priority date is current, so they will have to wait. Just what happened, this will cause us 8 to 9 months of delay, what we expect. And why I am saying that is, this takes a lot of patience. It's going to take you as an employer. This is, to me, is a true strategic planning, workforce planning, which we'll have to figure it out as an organization, that how do we manage that. We talked about a lot of nursing shortages. I will tell you, US still continues to be one of the most attractive country for Philippine nurses to come to migrate to US. You will see, on the other hand, there are several other countries offering very lucrative salaries with a very shorter timeline of 3 to 6 months of immigration process versus US, which takes 1 to 2 years, 3 years, and which takes a lot of patience associated with it. Really, as those opportunities are attractive, but it does come with a lot of concerns associated with it. One of our experiences, what we have seen in this two times when we have gone, first of all, Henry Ford's not new to it. Let me also preface that and give you some history. In 2004 or 5, of course, there was, I would say, we went to Philippines and we got a bunch of nurses who are kind of part of our community now. They are still there, and they are very excited to that. So we had a past experience about the caliber and the degree of loyalty to the organization what these nurses had. So that helped us to say, okay, let's go back again. Our past success is a kind of prediction for the future. We kind of took on that. We are facing the same issues what Dr. Malone talked about: high staff turnover, high agency rate. Finding the talent itself was difficult. Hence, we were one of the first ones who, in order to alleviate the strain, we decided to go to Philippines. We went to three different cities of Philippines. Our partner was able to screen and bring candidates to that. We had a team of about 6 to 7 nurse, HR and nursing managers, which went there. We interviewed them and kind of offered a lot of those great candidates who were very promising and with such a diverse and inclusive background that we were very excited that, hey, this is where we are in this journey. Lot of nurses, where we saw a lot of them were eager and ready to migrate to United States, which is usually their final destination when it comes to that. So both of our interview processes went very well. They were very streamlined. Our partners did a great job. We were able to interview a lot of candidates, and that was the successful of those 2 delegations coming through that. Now it's about, once we got them, how do we keep them engaged? So there is also a team at Henry Ford to make sure that we have a continuous engagement with these team members, because there are a lot of questions, and especially when the visa bulletin or things like this changes, there is a lot of anxiety and curiosity among team members, not knowing how it will impact their own self. So we have one of our sessions just happened to be just tomorrow morning. We have Henry Ford does a great way to communicate with them, keep them engaged, to say what's happening at Henry Ford, what's happening to them, and how can we help them to answer whatever questions they might have. We have a vast army, as I said, going back to the Filipino, our internal colleagues who are from that descent. We kind of are partnering with them, making them part of a committee to welcome them and make sure that we are addressing all the cultural issues associated with them, making sure they have buddy. They are coming in to a state like Michigan, which might not be that attractive with the weather around here. But how do we ensure we engage them, make them that they belong to the organization and feel that they made the right decision. We are also partnering with several external organizations in the community who can help to create the best world-class experience for that nurse associated with it. So really, our experience from an Henry Ford perspective has really been, I would say, has been truly phenomenal in getting the talent. We see a lot of diverse talent. They have a lot of experiences associated with it. What has been, what has not worked for us? I will tell you, there are, the first thing is, as I said, the cost of immigration is huge. A lot of nurses themselves, when they're ready to migrate, they rely on financial support from their family to, all the visa fees associated with it. Their earnings is not as much as the immigration cost, and especially if they are bringing the whole family, that all that cost can truly mount up very fast associated with it. So really, as an employer, you must be committed to the mission for advancing some form of financial support to this RN. That is a crucial thing what we have found out, because, as I said, there are several different expenses in this journey in the direct hire model. The second thing is, I would say, for the health system, it's a waiting game, right? Which is has been really challenging, for us, for our leaders, for our immigration attorneys, and for everybody, from the applicant itself. A lot of times interviews get delayed, as a part of immigration process, or after immigration, they want to have a couple of months. So it's always a moving target. And especially if something changes in visa, you're again going back to the drawing board to make sure what is that next available date. So truly setting the expectations of our leaders to say when they will expect those team members to be on their units is not an easy answer for us to say, and to manage those expectations is sometimes challenging. Another key thing what we have found lately is NCLEX have changed their standards starting of April. The licensure examinations associated with it, they have changed their standards, which has caused a significant amount of nurses to fail those NCLEX exams. What it does is that, and there are not many dates available for NCLEX. So if they fail once, that it kind of pushes their plan by 6 to 9 months. And that kind of creates a lot of challenges within their nurses, whatever their plans, what they have made, plus it kind of shakes up their confidence associated with it. So as an employer, how do you help them with respect to some assistance in helping to pass the NCLEX exam? So that's something what we have seen, and we are trying to step in to help those team members to assist with reviewing courses with some form of partnership with some organizations, so that way they can pass NCLEX on time. And those truly, if anybody has experienced the immigration process, truly there is a lot these nurses are going through, right? So leaving their homes, families. I personally have been on this journey. It's unimaginable to several of them, and it's a high emotional things which you have to deal with while you are dealing with these employees. Truly, and when you talk about the considerations associated with it, as Dr. Malone talked about it when she gave the example of the brain drain, the impact to the healthcare on their own country, right? Philippines themselves are trying to restrict, governmental regulations are coming in. They don't want their their healthcare system to fall. So really, they have been very, very conscious on this visa migrations associated with it. How do they compensate for the losses of their exceptional, talented, and needed healthcare workers, right? Those workers are really needed in their healthcare system, and when they migrate, a lot of experienced nurses, they feel the shortages, they feel the pain, and truly how as an organization, I will tell you one of the last thing is we should be committed to one of the ethical international strategy, right? We got to accept a commitment of continuous scrutiny to our own programs to make sure that we are doing the right things and we are embracing change whenever and wherever it is necessary during this journey of the nurse. I think, Jared, hopefully, as I said, that's where it is. I'll tell you one line is there is a lot of ownership to the process. We have to, and it's a learning journey, especially when you go first. So, be ready for it, buckle your seatbelts and get ready. It's a fun experience. It's a very fulfilling and rewarding experience, but it takes a lot of commitment.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I actually have a question. So from Henry Ford's perspective and experience, did human resources and talent acquisition professionals, when they traveled to the Philippines and began that engagement, did you do that in collaboration with Henry Ford's international department, or how did that work?
No, we hired a recruitment. We had an overseas recruitment partner who was expert in international recruitment. So we kind of partnered with them. They would do the pre-screen for us and have the candidates ready. So when we went with human resources and nursing manager, we had a schedule of like job fairs with all the interviews lined up, ready to go, in 3 cities of Philippines. And while we are there, that is where we would kind of interview them and give them on the spot offer on the same day. It takes a lot of planning from your end to understand what positions are open for you. You got to make sure that you exactly know as an organization what are your needs 18 to 24 months out, because while you are interviewing that nurse with the immigration process and thing, they might be 18 months out minimum. So you got to know that when I am taking 10 labor and delivery nurses, I'm going to need them 18 months down the lane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, great. Okay, so we have several questions that have come in. So I'm going to read them and then pose them to any of our panelists who would like to answer. So the first, we talked about this a little bit. So how do you manage retention as well as helping nurses integrate into a different culture than they're used to?
Well, if I'd like to respond to that, Jared, because the issues are like bringing any nurse transitioning into the work setting, are how they work with the other team. The rest of the team is a big issue for the team as well as for the individual coming in. One of the things that I think is very helpful is that there is the Association of Filipino Nurses Association of America, and they have chapters in various states, usually in the larger states, the larger cities, New York City, yep, New Jersey, yep, places where they tend to integrate, come into the cities. They have Filipino Nurses Associations that are steeped in knowledge about transitioning into the US community. That's the thing. They specialize in it. They have mentors available. They know about the family situations. They go home every other year or every year. So they stay on top of all the issues, and they really work hard to make the transition as easy as possible. So that is one way to reach out to the resources that are already there available to you in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to comment too, real quickly. I know you, like AJ, you're on the ground, but where we sit, so we're responsible for the safe and effective migration of nurses and other health professionals. We were formed by the National League for Nursing and the American Nurses Association in 1977 because nurses coming over to the United States were failing the licensure examination and they were ashamed to their family, many committing suicide. So to your point, AJ, this is a big concern. And that was the reason why the CGFNS International developed a qualifying exam as a predictor for success on the licensure examination. But in recent years, as we've looked at the migration of nurses, We sort of, after they get their reports, they come back to us for other reports as they want to migrate again. We see them move from one country to another. But what they're asking us now for is a sense of community. Everything that both you and Bev are saying is exactly what they're looking for. We need to help to provide them a better sense of community. And we are starting to work on those kinds of initiatives right now. Over to
And
you.
I tell you, and that is exactly what we are doing. We have partnered with Philippines. What Beth says about the Philippines American Association of Detroit. We have partnered, we have created a buddy system within Henry for all the Filipino origin nursing. We are taking care of their housing. We have a contractual service for to ensure that their first 30 to 60-day experience is seamless, and they are not kind of there. They don't know whether, what buses to take. They don't have to worry about those things. So how do we get there? Another thing which has worked for us, what I believe and which will work for everybody, is that over a period of time of last 10, 15 years, there is a lot of migration which has happened from those Philippines area. So now what we are seeing, one trend is also they have a lot of friends and family around also. And really, one of the biggest lesson what we are trying to capitalize is when our first nurse arrives on next week, how do we ensure we leverage that nurse to redefine the experience for the next one coming? Because that is going to be an important one, because the first person who goes through it will be our kind of person to help us guide the experience for the second one coming. And how do we keep that journey or the train of connecting the next and ensuring that streamlined experience is there is the key for us.
Well, one of the things for me, AJ, is that it's not just about the nurse coming in from out of the country. It's about the staff that are already there and the community of the unit where they're working. So community, big community, global community, city community, but also the community of who do they go into work with every day? And do the rest of the nurses see favoritism being shown toward this particular person coming in, where they feel, oh, there's special treatment for them? And look at how they're treating us who have been here all along, giving everything we've got. It's got to be a systems level of looking at the entire organization, not just the nurses coming in, but the nurses who are also there. And I think that sometimes we miss out on that. We don't look at it as a system. We're looking at it individually instead of understanding that so much of being a part of the team that's already there, being accepted, being that the only way care is given to patients is through collaboration and partnering on the units. And if that's not there, there's going to be more than just the leaving of your international recruits. It's going to be the continual leaving of those who are from the US, who are working there already, who are giving everything they've got. So it has to be a multi-pronged approach that covers not just international, but the entire system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great points. We have a few more questions. I think openness to any of our panelists. So one question was asked, what is the biggest reason behind not pursuing more partnerships in Mexico to recruit nurses there? Concerned with the level of education there, Mexican government putting barriers, or is it mostly the immigration barriers? It seems like a huge missed opportunity.
Yeah, I'd love to start with this, and Bev might want to add something too. We've got to look at the context in which we deliver care. And there's got to be cultural context, and it's the way we communicate. Nurses, we communicate in the context of the environment, the family, and in a language that is understood. So that's one issue. It's sometimes that there is the language barrier. You've got the Philippines and India, for instance, that are very good with English in English-speaking language. Now, however, there is a huge need for Spanish-speaking nurses in the United States because we have a high population of Spanish-speaking patients. So, we, as Beth said earlier, we're a microcosm of the population. But the licensure examination is delivered in English. If you can't pass the licensure exam, you're going to have a challenge. So one of the things that we've done at CGFNS International is looked at mediated pathways to assist internationally qualified nurses to get prepared to be English proficient before they sit for the licensure examination. We found that to be extremely successful in Indonesia.
And I have to admit that there is some a lack of being able to crosswalk the nursing education in Mexico with the nursing education in the States. That is an issue. And so that leads to challenges on taking that NCLEX. I mean, it's challenging for US citizens to take the NCLEX and with the new next gen coming out. So it is an increased level of challenge for our colleagues who are on our southern borders.
Yeah, no, and that's another good point. And what we find is that nurses in other parts of the world, not Mexico, other places, educate their nursing students very differently than we do in the United States. There's a high level of independence in the United States. There's a high level of emphasis on the nursing process, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. In other parts of the world, you're educated as a physician extender. The licensure examination is geared towards independent practitioner thinking, critical thinking, problem solving within the context. So these are challenges that, and it's these are areas that we're talking to the National League for Nursing on about how we can lift all boats around the world, not through a lens of being American, but through critical thinking, problem solving, tools and techniques that transcend culture and country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Dr. Malone, were you going to say something?
It's this effort on all of our parts to make sure that we're receptive to our colleagues who want to come and practice here in the United States, because some want to come because it's the US and it's a better place for them and their families. So we want to do that, but we want to make sure that once they arrive, that there's the support system that AJ talked about, that my colleague Peter is talking about, that the support system is also there so that it's not a deceptive coming when you're not welcomed. And we do need to build a system and to help our colleagues, all of us in our hospital systems and our community centers, to be a more welcoming place for those who are coming in.
Mm-hmm. We had a question, will Henry Ford rethink their current recruitment strategy if the Philippines caps the number of nurses who can immigrate?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Will Henry Ford rethink their current recruitment strategy if the Philippines caps the number of nurses who can immigrate?
We'll rethink our strategy if number of nurses passed, you said?
Yes, if they cap it, if the Philippines caps the number of nurses.
Absolutely. Again, this is, as I would say, as my colleague talked about it, this is a multi-pronged approach. This is just one of the tool in the toolbox when you think about it. We are lucky to be on the border of, let's say, Detroit is just located for people, near Canada. So we have a lot of Canadian nurses into our system. We are very diverse. So absolutely, we have our hospital affiliations in India, a couple of hospitals we have partnered with there in India, truly. So we are continuously looking to, we were the first ones to go into Philippines, within the employer base when this started as per our partners, and we'll continue to look what's next, because we just cannot keep on thinking that Philippines is our answer. The well is dry. The success what we got first time versus success we got second time was totally different, right? Because a lot of employers now have started going there. So, the well is trying to get dry with the caps associated with it, with immigration problems. So we really, as a leader of the talent, we are already looking at what's next and what else we can do about it to ensure how do we fill this shortage? We also have to make sure that we talk with government. We are also doing government affairs to say, how do we get these nurses across the world, and the immigration challenges what we have today that hinders our healthcare system, and what can we do to lobby it out, you can say, or pass it out in these cases. So yes, we are already looking at other things, I will tell you, to say how do we get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I just want to speak to getting ahead of the curve, AJ and Peter, and that is that we know that the two primary reasons for the nursing shortage, in addition to COVID that came, I mean, it was a nursing shortage before COVID came, and it is lack of nurse educators and a lack of clinical placements for those students to be educated. Those are the two primary reasons. And so the question becomes one of, what are we also, that multi-prong effect, what are we also going to do about that in terms of having enough nurse educators? So it's not enough just to bring in a number of nurses to plug in the holes. It's about what kind of pipeline internally are we going to develop and make sure is here. We also have the issue that Peter brought up of diversity and equity, that when he was talking about Mexico, and now we have a wonderful population of Spanish speaking patients and people who need care. How are we going to make sure that we have enough providers, enough nurses to actually meet the requirements of providing safe, quality, continually improving healthcare? And that's going to take a lot of partnerships. It's going to take partnerships between the Henry Fords and Michigan State University. And I know that you're working on that, as a matter of fact.
Yep. Yeah, we are already working on that.
Those kind of academic and healthcare facility partnerships are going to be so crucial to making sure that we have enough nurses, those recruited internationally and those that are brought in from home right here in the United States.
No, and I'll tell you, as I said, it's a part of your talent strategy on how do you fill the gaps, right? So that's what you got to think through. And I always say agency, even though it's costly, that's part of your strategy. It's just what % you go through it. This is part of your strategy. You still using placement firms, all those things are going to be part of your answer.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say I'm having a little bit of challenge trying to respond to somebody. My drop down's not allowing me to do it to everyone, but they were asking about requirements for English language proficiency. There are requirements that internationally qualified nurses are required to sit for an English language proficiency examination and must pass that. I mean, there are a number of those in the market. So what we do is we encourage English language proficiency first before they try to take either our qualifying exam or the licensure examination. We also do, there was another question about whether or not we track nurses from other countries, like in the Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. Yes, we do. I don't have that data with me right now. And we do see we do track migratory patterns of nurses and other health professions in other parts of the world as well.
But Jared, I think that the panelists that you put together is an example of the types of partnerships that are going to be required for us to really address this issue. Mm-hmm. We're going to need our colleagues who are in the healthcare settings like Henry Ford. I need my colleague who is specialized in the whole, how you bring nurses over, Peter and CGFNS and the National League for Nursing, where that's who we are. We are about nursing education and preparing the workforce, the diverse and equitable workforce. So I'm thinking that one of the answers that everyone says they're looking for is right here in front of us, and that is partnerships make a difference, and we're all headed in the same direction on this.
Mm-hmm. Now that's really an excellent point. I do want to underscore how important that is. And just last week, we've been having a series of meetings with the National Council of State Boards of Nursing, the licensure board, and they sometimes, we all forget the life cycle of that migrating nurse. And AJ did a beautiful job of talking about that earlier today. It's a very long, arduous road, and there are pathways. And what we've recognized, we have to reach in earlier and much sooner as people are starting their journey in this career, whether it's in nursing or other health professions, and really start to partner and work with organizations like the National League for Nursing, for instance, as people are embarking on a career in healthcare, as they want to be more mobile around the world. So I absolutely agree. And the National Council, it wasn't that they didn't want to work. They just didn't really think about, it wasn't in their perception. And then they were like, wow, yeah, we should be partnering a lot more to create greater success of safe and effective mobility of all health professionals.
Great, thank you. We have about 5 minutes left in the session. Are there any other questions from the audience?
There's a comment from me that I would like to have in closing, and that is that I just want to say that the heroic efforts of all the nurses and all the healthcare entities out there, the Henry Fords of the world, and all of the other colleagues, that I am amazed at how we are providing care, safe, quality care for the people of this country. And yes, there's areas where we have gaps and where we need to grow, but it's not because we're not putting forth the effort. It's not because there aren't nurses who are totally committed to providing safe, quality care, but we're going to have to make sure there are enough and that they're supported just the way that AJ talked about supporting our international recruits. It's just got to be the way we do business for all of our faculty, all of our employees, all of our colleagues. We're going to have to be more supportive and find ways to partner and share the cost. I hear the cost issue, I hear the dollar issue, but we can partner more about sharing those costs and how we can make sure that we have the workforce that's required to keep the nation safe.
And thanks for that, Bev. And, just having been at the World Health Organization for the past 3 years and hearing stories from nurses and physicians and pharmacists and physical therapists, occupational therapists, all types of health workers around the world that were not treated well because they were the target of the frustrations that many societies had with the pandemic. And you're right, Bev, to be able to go through that and continue to show up at work, continue to risk lives of when we didn't really know that much about COVID-19 it truly is heroic. So, really great thoughts on, thinking about, those of us that are on the front lines, really caring for patients and their families.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much to our panelists for joining us. And we have been recording this session, and it will be made available online. And I also just wanted to mention in closing, relatedly, on Thursday, May 25th, NCHL will host a coffee chat on another topic related to nursing. And the title for that is "The Time Is Now: Addressing the Nursing Shortage with Transformative Organizational Changes," which we heard a lot of themes about that today, I think, from our panelists. So please do join us for that. You'll all, if you're signed up on our mailing list or a member organization, you should be getting those emails. So thank you, everyone, and really appreciate your time, and have a good rest of your day and a good week, everyone.